Hey there, folks. Welcome back to another episode of the East to West Hunts podcast. Today we are going to talk bird hunting and pretty much everything birds. We can include turkeys as birds, right? And my guest today is Gary Berger, who owns Last Light Guide Service, which I have been fortunate enough to work with him before, and it was a great experience. So I figure as we get into turkey season and just bird hunting in general, we could talk some shops. Welcome to the show, Gary. How you doing?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
I'm looking forward to chatting with you. We haven't chatted in a while, actually. So I think the last time I saw you was at one of those meetups where we were shooting clays or whatnot.
Yep.
Yeah. So I saw online you were guiding what yesterday, I think it was,
Yeah.
and
Yep. We were up
how
at the Rooster Ranch.
Rooster Ranch. Okay. So you're guiding in Michigan for all the viewers and listeners here. How often are you at the Rooster Ranch?
Once wild bird season's over, generally they're pretty much every weekend.
Okay.
I'm not 100% full time on guiding, so I still have 9 to 5. But
Hmm.
once spring and summer hit for my main job, we go to 410. So I start having every Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. So that's when turkey season really starts ramping up, and then right before turkey season, I'm at the Rooster Ranch every weekend running the dogs.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have how many dogs? Two?
Yeah, I got 2 bird dogs.
Nice. What breeds?
One's a English setter. He's
Okay.
a rescue. We ended up getting him for free from another guide. He didn't want him and wanted him to go to a good spot, so we rescued him. He's actually extremely good. And then we didn't even plan on getting a dog and ended up with a little half breed. He's half Llewellyn setter, half white hair pointing Griffon. But he's my Swiss Army knife. He does a bit of everything. He does upland birds. He does ducks, geese, tracks deer. This last couple weeks I started training him to find antler sheds. So he
Nice.
does just a little bit of everything.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I see you're constantly doing something with the dogs. I've always had an appreciation for what a really a bird hunter has to do. I can only imagine on the guiding side, but how how much work is it to work with the dogs all the time?
It's a lot. It turns into an obsession. So it's just straight passion. You're just constantly wanting to make them better, wanting to get them on the up and up. Birds make a bird dog, so the more birds you can put a dog in front of, the better. You can only teach a dog so much. The birds really teach them the rest,
Mm.
and just giving them that contact and that exposure to birds, they start to learn how birds act and how they can get the end result of the reward of them being able to retrieve a dead bird.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's like practice with anything, right? They gotta have time with it. The
Yeah, exactly. It's just more and more you do it, the better they get.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. I remember first meeting you, and you were probably the most passionate turkey hunter I've ever met. Do you have a like a first choice there in between upland birds and turkeys?
I try not to. I just always say because I hunt everything, big
Hmm.
game, small game, birds, everything. I always say I'm really glad spring turkey is the only thing going on during spring turkey because I'd hate to have to choose.
God, that's so true. I feel the same way. I really look forward to the spring turkey time because then it's not competing with anything else.
No.
Well, let's talk some birds. I'm more curious because I've only been out upland bird hunting a few times, but in your perspective, do you have a favorite species to hunt and any particular reason why?
Yeah, definitely. Number one is grouse, and usually rough grouse. But I also hunt sharp tails in the UP and out west. I go out to North Dakota every year with a group of buddies and bird dogs, and we hunt sharp tails and Hungarian partridge. And then waterfowl season's open while we're there, so we also waterfowl hunt in the mornings. But yeah, grouse is where the passion really, really started.
Okay.
I think a big thing is there. like pheasants are challenging, wild pheasants are challenging, but most people in Michigan get the exposure to pheasants from ranches, and a ranch bird is nothing like a wild bird. They're not as smart, they're not as tough, and then there's no way to get on grouse except wild birds,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just super challenging. My first bird dog, we hunted almost 2 full seasons without even seeing a grouse because we didn't really know what we were doing. But
Mm-hmm.
once we started figuring out, and just almost 2 years of hunting this pea-sized brain bird that's been outsmarting us, and finally having one in my hand, it was just, I was over the moon. But they're extremely challenging. A lot of grouse dog guys will tell you when you get a puppy and you have a, whether it be a setter or a Brittany or any of the, or GSP, any of the pointing breeds that people generally hunt grouse with, it usually takes 3 or 4 seasons before you really know what kind of grouse dog you have, because it takes that long for the dog to really figure them out.
Yeah, so once you kind of figured it out, right, after 2 seasons, you said you didn't even see them. What do you feel like was the change to just kind of like, get it?
Knowing the bird itself, knowing the habitat in the time of year, because a lot of people don't realize with deer, turkeys, grouse, everything, they change their location where they live with the season, where the food is, where the nesting, where the water. So depending on the weather and what food's available is going to depend on where the birds are. So
Mm-hmm.
like for instance with grouse in the early season, we find them a lot in because it's warm out. We find them a lot in like aspen cuts with a swamp, like a cedar swamp nearby. So they
Okay.
have that thermal cover to go get water and stay cool when it's hot out. And then as the season goes on, we start to find them more in the aspen cuts. They're an aspen cut is always going to have, generally always have grouse, but some aspen cuts will be near a cedar swamp, so you'll find them there in the first part of the year, and then maybe across the road there'll be more of an aspen cut with a bunch of scrub oaks in them. Well, then now the birds transition in the late fall over there because they're eating the buds off the aspen trees, and
Mm-hmm.
they're eating the little acorns that are coming off the scrub oaks.
Nice. Okay. That's really good info. I would have never known that. Attention hunters. Are you sick and tired of the complicated draw systems and tag applications that take place out west? Or maybe you want to plan a western hunt or maybe one of your dream hunts and you don't really even know where to start. Well, that's where East to West Hunts comes in. We take care of everything for you. We'll do the tag applications. We just need to put a strategy in play for you of what you're trying to do and when you're trying to go. Whether it's short term, mid-term, or long term, we want to have that play and that strategy together. And when you do draw a tag, we can look at do-it-yourself options such as hunt plans that detail out exactly how to hunt those areas, or we can get you booked with a guide and outfitter in that specific unit or area. So don't leave that hunt to chance. Give us a call, set up a time on the website, contact us on social media, whatever it is, and let's get planning towards that dream hunt of yours. And let's make it a reality. Check us out on www.east2westhunts.com. Again, that is www.east2westhunts.com. Also check us out on Instagram, YouTube, and podcast. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon. What do
A
you?
good rule of thumb is I try to find aspen cut that has a good stem density, so it's pretty thick. Most people look at it when you drive up and they're like, "How am I supposed to get a shotgun up and swing it in there?" And it's like, "Oh, you'll figure it out. You're gonna figure it out." But generally, the best covers are gonna be aspen cuts with like 10% conifers. So there's a sprinkling of pines through it, and that's
Okay.
going to be the thermal cover. So whether it's hot out, those pines are cooler, and if it's blizzard cold out, those pines are going to be a little warmer, and that's where those birds are going to want to roost in that thermal cover.
Yeah, that part makes total sense. What do you foresee as like, when you got When you got some newbies coming out with you, right? First time, maybe they're upland hunting. What do you think that you would give as like the best advice for them to be aware of on a hunt like that?
For grouse, it's you hear and feel the flush more than you see it. So it's a one of experience. You literally, when they flush, it's such like a low tone, you can feel it in your chest
Mm-hmm.
when their wings beat, when they flush. And most people, their first time out, they'll have a bird flush 20 yards away from them. Well, like I said, stem density, it's thick. They're like, I barely saw it. Well, why
Mm-hmm.
didn't you shoot? Well, I didn't have a good shot. This isn't pheasant hunting. You're not out in a wide open field. You're shooting at a flash of movement and a sound.
Yeah.
It's honestly more rare than common to have a wide open, beautiful shot at a grouse.
Well, I
So
could
if
see that being
I always
challenging
go
though,
off
right?
of, yeah, I always go with the rule of you ain't shooting, you ain't killing. As long as you stay situationally aware of where everybody is and where the dogs are, and that grouse generally don't get up really low. They try to get up towards the canopies to be able to move.
Mm-hmm.
So you're up high enough to not be dangerous shooting around the dogs, and as long as you always keep your situational awareness on where everybody else is,
Yeah.
as long as you can take a safe shot. You didn't bring that ammo to take it home.
I like that. Totally.
I have to tell people that all the time.
Do you? That's funny, man.
Yeah.
Walk me through what's a day hunting with you as a guide doing that exact hunt, like start to finish. Because I haven't done one of these guided at all. You know, I've seen grouse as I'm out and about, but I've never actually like particularly hunted them myself.
Yeah, so it's gonna all depend on the time of year, and once I also big reason for success is gonna be scouting, just like any other hunting. So it's called quiet time in Michigan. Once it gets close to the spring, the the Michigan DNR shuts down that you're allowed to run dogs in the woods because of ground nesting birds
Mm-hmm.
and deer fawns being dropped. So there's a quiet time you're not allowed to run dogs, and then it opens back up in July.
Okay.
So it's almost like our first bird season to us as dog handlers, because it's like, sweet, quiet time's over this weekend. Let's go up. Let's put the dogs in some covers and see first and foremost what the bird numbers look like this year. If we had a good hatch, if we're seeing a lot of young birds, or if we can get on birds. So then that's all scouting. It's all seeing where the birds are. So if you were coming out, I'd already kind of have a plan of where we're going to go and the spots we're going to hit for the day. And it's just meet up, and then we'll get to the spot and give a little safety talk. Don't shoot each other, don't shoot the dogs. Let's be safe, and more importantly, have a bunch of fun. If if you hear a bird flush, I always stress, just like I said, if you hear a bird flush, try to catch that movement, and as long as everything's safe, take the shot. You have to be ready to shoot, because sometimes they wild flush. I have pointing dogs. Generally, the dogs will get birdie and the dogs will slam point, and we'll have time to, like, hey, dog's on point, get over here, and
Mm-hmm.
we can move up on the dog and get closer to the bird. But sometimes they wild flush.
Okay.
And then also, you're looking for two different flushes, because generally during rough grouse season, especially the earlier season, we're looking for grouse and we're looking for woodcock,
Yeah.
and they sound two completely different things when they flush. So they also share like the same cover generally.
Okay.
So when a woodcock flushes, it sounds like a whistle going out, just, and it's not their sound, it's their wing beats. And
Mm-hmm.
then when a grouse gets up, it sounds like a helicopter taking off.
Yeah. Always spooks somebody.
But it's yeah. If they flush real close, if say the dogs are way over to the left, and a bird gets up right next to you, you're gonna have a pucker moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely have had those before. You know, you're not even hunting. You don't expect it out of nowhere. They just pop up and you're just like, whoa. Love it. What shotgun and like choke size and load do you recommend for somebody?
So you can use anything from a 410, 28, 20, or a 12 with your shotgun gauge. Um, when you're in the woods after woodcock, if woodcock season's happening and we're gonna shoot woodcock as well, they're a migratory bird. So federally, just like
Hmm.
waterfowl, you're only allowed to have three shells, two in the mag and one in the chamber. So I upland hunt with a double barrel, so that
Okay.
I'm always legal on that aspect. And then it just depends on what you want to carry. Some people show up and they have a big, heavy Remington 1100 12 gauge, and it's like, dude, we're gonna be walking through some thick stuff all day long. You're not gonna want to carry that big, heavy gun very long. I found my favorite grouse gun is a double barrel 28 gauge. It's super light. It hits just as hard, maybe a little less than a 20 gauge, but a 20 gauge works fine too, nice and light and easy. And then on a double barrel, I run a an improved cylinder and then a modified. So my first barrel that goes off is going to be improved cylinder because the bird's going to be the closest, and that second shot's going to be modified to punch through brush.
Nice. Okay.
If you're running generally if you're running like a semi-auto or a pump or something, then I generally tell people just go with modified because you're always going to be able to punch through brush. And
Yeah.
these little birds, grouse and woodcock, they're not super tough, so it only takes one or two BBs to get them down, and then the dog relocate them and retrieve them. So generally, in the early season when all the foliage is up, I'll usually run like a seven shot, maybe a six if that's all I got, but generally like a seven shot, seven and a half. And then when the foliage is down, I'll switch over to like an eight or a nine, even a nine sometimes.
Okay.
And then in the current situation of ammo, the last since 2020,
Hmm.
it's kind of you get what you can get. So if all I can find is nine shot, then I'm hunting nine shot. But I definitely don't want to go any bigger than a six.
Yeah. That's why I was asking. I figured you were gonna say more of the smaller shot, but you just never know.
Yeah,
I feel like everybody's had recommendations. I would have been shocked if you said six actually right off the rip.
yeah, a five, a four. That's going to be what I'm going to grab if I'm going after sharp tail grouse because you're in more of like what you would think is closer to pheasant cover. It's still different than pheasant cover,
Hmm.
but you're in a wide open field. They're not in thick brush. They're out in wide open fields. They're a prairie bird.
Yeah.
So they're out in wide open fields. So you're gonna want a little heavier shot that you can. Then you're gonna want a heavier choke too because your shots are gonna be further. So you
Yeah.
want a tighter pattern further out.
That makes sense.
They can be pretty, especially in Michigan. Especially in Michigan, our sharp tails, they're only found in the UP on the eastern side of the UP, over towards Sault Ste. Marie.
Hmm.
So being only in that location, they're pressured pretty good. So they're pretty spooky. They're pretty jumpy birds. So generally, when we're out there, we'll get usually like our closest shots 30 yards,
Okay.
but some of them we're poking out to 50, 60 yards.
Yeah, that's a tough shot.
Yeah, it can be. Again, they're not super tough birds, and as long as you can get them hit and get them down, the dog can do the rest.
So for you guiding, like, are you mainly guiding birds?
Yeah, generally. So I guide starting off in the beginning of the year. So starting off in January, I'm guiding at the Rooster Ranch on the weekends, and uh, also if people want to go on a pheasant hunt, walk up pheasant hunt. We also use Dead End Pheasant Farm in Elmont,
Okay.
and then once that's over, then spring turkey comes, and I work for an outfit up in Port Hope, Hot Shot Outfitters, and I'm there every single weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, hunting turkeys. And
Mm-hmm.
then after that, then it's just summer training. It's just keeping the dogs conditioned. Don't let them get lazy and fat couch potatoes, and still showing them birds, whether it be pigeons or we'll buy quail. Me and some buddies will buy a bunch of quail from a bird breeder, and we have fields that we can use and do little mock hunts. And it's just working on the dog's steadiness, keeping the dogs in tune.
Mm-hmm.
And then once September comes around, September comes around, we then we can get after the grouse and woodcock. Open September 15th, and we pretty much hunt those the whole season of grouse. And then in Michigan, there's not a whole lot. They're here, but there's not a whole big population of wild pheasants. It can be done. We do really good on wild pheasants, but it's you might walk 10 hours and do 15 miles on your boots and move 5 birds.
Yeah.
And half of them might be hens, which you're only allowed to shoot roosters. So it's not really the population's not here to really guide a bunch of people to wild pheasants. So
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to wild pheasants, we generally just fun hunt, me and a couple buddies, whoever's
Yeah.
crazy enough to walk from sunup to sundown.
Sounds fun, man.
Oh, it's a riot. And
Yeah.
again, it's the challenge. You talk to so many people that are like, there's 0 pheasants in Michigan, and it's like, well, I got a limit last weekend of pheasants. We got a 3-man limit last weekend of pheasants. So it's the challenge and just kind of the being able to do it.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, you obviously got to know where you're going to if you got a good spot. I think that's going to play out. But obviously for you, if you're doing it for, a living, venture to bet you know what you're doing there.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I generally try for grouse or pheasants. Say I'm going up to hunt for a weekend, I will, unless I'm with clients. If I'm with clients, I don't want to hunt new spots. I want to hunt proven spots.
hmm
But generally, if I'm just hunting with buddies or by myself, I'm gonna hit, a spot I've never been to that looks good, put the dogs on the ground, see what happens, and then hunt a couple proven spots, and then hunt another. I try to break it up 50-50, where I know there's going to be birds over here, and I've never been here, we should check it out.
okay.
So you're always it's always scouting during the season basically, and just adding more spots to your roster of where you can go to get on birds.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you mentioned with pheasants, you're going sun up to sundown. When you're doing your grouse hunts, for example, or the woodcock, how long are those hunts? Are you doing majority of the morning? Are you doing an all day deal, like 8 hours?
So in the guiding side, we do half days. It can be, the morning half or the afternoon half, or even full day. But me, when I don't have clients and I'm just going, I generally hunt almost pretty much all day, because it's not. So your limit of woodcock is 3 a day. Your limit of grouse is 5 a day.
Mm,
There's not. It's not super common to get a limit of grouse, just because they're so hard to hit. They're so hard to get up on. They're generally hard to find. Some days we'll have good days where we put up 20, 30 birds of grouse. Then there's some days where it's like, man, we only put up 6 birds today and only
hmm
had a good look at 2.
Yeah.
So at the end of it, you're still hunting. It's still in the bird's favor more than I always explain. That bird has one job. It's to
Stay
not
alive.
die, and it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's a job.
Yeah, I mean that's it, man. It's survival. It's survival. So that's awesome. I think there's some good nuggets in there, some good takeaways on my part. Now, if I think about a different bird, we think turkeys, right? Totally different ball game. I feel like turkeys are everywhere. You're obviously not hunting them with dogs, but you yourself, I witnessed. I mean, you're an excellent caller, and I thought that was super impressive. But as far as turkey hunting, what would you say is your biggest experience deviation, or like what do you see in terms of hunting upland birds versus turkeys, and like the major differences?
There's not, to me, with all hunting, it's all basically the same. It's scouting and knowing the animal, what the animal wants, where they want to be, where they like to sleep, where they like to eat.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can get really proficient at those aspects of any big game, small game, any of it, you can get very proficient at harvesting them. So it's just transitioning to a different game plan, just
Mm-hmm.
doing what turkeys do. But
What?
it all comes down to scouting.
Yeah. It was interesting though because you were mentioning, with the grouse and whatnot, their their cover, the swampy aspect, kind of the edges. Have you seen similarities with turkeys, or what other kind of actual areas do you see turkeys really enjoying when you're scouting?
Yeah, they have the same kind of pattern. So there's going to be water not crazy far away. You're looking for so their roost is going to be in decently open woods that they can get a good running start and fly up into a tree to roost for the night. And then it's going to come down to food where they up in Port Hope where I guide, it's a lot of ag fields. So we're getting on winter wheat and alfalfa, and for the that they're growing for the cattle up there. And the birds are in there eating that too, and they're also eating the bugs that are in those fields. So it's
Yeah.
just knowing where they're going to want to roost, and then what they're going to want to eat. And then me personally, I enjoy riding around in the afternoon and owl hooting when they're getting up on the roost and catching a gobble on the roost and going, I know he's sleeping right there. We can sneak right in there and get on him in the morning.
Have you noticed a particular tree that they really really like? Because it makes sense as far as the openness for them to get in. Have you noticed that they like maples or anything like that?
It's generally not necessarily the type of tree, it's the way that tree's growing. They need branches that are growing straight out. They don't want branches that are growing more up. So as long as there's some good sized branches that are growing straight out and they can get up there and perch on them for the night,
Hmm.
generally, because I've seen them in oaks, I've seen them in maples, I've seen them roost in pine trees, you know.
Yeah.
So it's just it's not necessarily the species of tree, more the how that tree, specific tree, is growing.
It makes sense. The reason I ask is because I've seen them in all kinds of different trees. To your point, I had an 80-acre parcel and we had a ton of turkeys on there, but they really really liked this like edge of these cedars, and I would catch them. They'd roost in these cedars, but they were really really old trees. They could definitely it could definitely hold them. Let's put it that way. And then in the Port Hope area, right, I'm seeing them in slightly different trees, but to your point, they're big mature trees that can certainly hold them, and those tree limbs are definitely just coming straight out from them. So just was definitely curious as your experience goes, because if you're seeing them consistently, maybe there is a trend, but it sounds like it's not a trend. It's more of the area and what they like in that particular spot.
They're just like anything, they're creatures of habit. So if you have like that 80-acre parcel, generally this group of trees they like to roost in, and
Hmm.
they'll roost in those, almost every night. They might, I have a piece down towards me that I hunt, and there's two spots that they're either, in these mature timbers to the east or these mature timbers to the northwest. If they're going to be in one of those two spots. So first thing when I hunt there, I walk out just as the sun's coming up, owl hoot, catch a gobble, and then okay, they're over to the east, so we need to get on towards the east
Hmm.
and just hurry up and scramble over there.
Do you feel like there's one particular key element that makes a successful turkey hunt? Like, is it the calling? Do you have a particular setup? Is it just the scouting that really makes it the most successful? Like, what do you find being the top thing?
I'd say scouting. If you because if you're not where the birds are at, there ain't gonna be no birds there. You gotta you gotta know where they're at, what they want. But then there's other things that can make you more successful once you have that down, like calling. A lot of new people tend to call too much. We have the subspecies of wild turkey in Michigan that is called the Eastern. Easterns are finicky birds. They generally, I find that they like to be talked to, and then you shut up and it drives them crazy. They got to come see where you went. Where like out west for Miriam's and Rio Grandes, they like to be talked to the whole time, the whole way in. Generally, they don't like the silent treatment. They kind of, you go silent, they go, oh, I guess they're gone. I guess
Yeah.
I'll go about my way. Where where a lot of Easterns, a lot of our birds are Easterns. You can, I mean, you get them fired up and you can talk to them the whole way in, and they just want to be talked to. But more, a bigger percentage of the time, I have my most success getting them real excited, real fired up, and then just shutting up for 10, 15 minutes. And then all of a sudden you're like, man, I haven't heard him gobble in a while. And then all of a sudden you hear him spitting and drumming. So now you know he's within, 50, 60 yards. He's
Yep.
coming. He's here. Be ready.
I experienced that last year. I was sitting with my daughter for probably 3 hours, randomly calling here and there. I know there's turkeys in the area, but typically we'd hear them, but it was just super quiet. And then I don't know, 20 minutes after my last call, here comes this Tom, and he's like right behind us, and he came in super quiet, and I ended up spooking him because I turned to go look, and he saw like the bill of my hat up against the tree, but I had no idea he was there. And to that point, like exactly to what you're saying, he might have heard me and came in, but he was probably really curious of where I was at, and we were silent for quite a bit of time. So
I can't speak for, the Rios and Miriams, but I know for a fact Easterns have an uncanny ability to, you call to them and they can be to the base of that tree when they feel like it. It could be in 10 minutes, it could be 2 hours from now, but they could be a couple hundred yards away and they hear you. They know where you're at. They have a really good ability to be able to pinpoint where that calling is. And
hmm
then again, if you're on a field edge and you're calling and you don't have a decoy out there, a lot of these toms will be like, I hear her, but I don't see her. I don't trust this.
yeah, yeah, they're
If
definitely
you're,
smart.
if I'm hunting, timber where the eyesight can't really see very far, then you're fine running no decoy because they've got to come search for you. But if you're in a field, if to me, in my opinion, you gotta. I'll always run a decoy if I'm on a field, and then decoy set. Some guys run a single hen. I've some parts of the season, like depending what the birds are doing, you can run a flock. You can run a Jake decoy with 5 or 6 hen decoys and bring them in that way. My go-to setup is usually a lay down hen with a Jake decoy right on top of her getting ready to breed, and then I'll have like a feeding hen like 10 yards over to the side just as
Mm.
another bird.
Okay.
And generally, most of my birds die running into the decoys to beat the crap out of them.
It's funny because I have a Jake and I have a lay down hen. I haven't done the second hen piece, but to that same point, if a Tom's pissed, he's running in and you're decking him. So it's funny. It's good to hear. I feel like it's close to the same page there.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't like seeing a mature Tom doesn't like seeing a young Jake being able to breed.
Yeah, yeah, they get pissed. I forgot what it's called. It's a very skinny looking, ugly Jake. Man, I'm trying to think what it was.
Oh, the funky chicken.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Dude, that thing drives him
Yeah.
crazy because it just looks so awkward.
Yeah.
I love it.
And then on decoys again, to me, you get a lot of people, they're like, well, I'm going to put a big strutting Tom out there. And that's fine. Generally, if you put a strutting Tom out there, at least here in Michigan, If a bird runs in on that, it's probably going to be a very big, very mature bird. But if you're just trying to punch your tag on a long beard, it doesn't have to be a 4-year-old bird with inch and a half spurs. Just a nice tom. Generally, unless there's more than one of them together, if they've had their butt kicked before by another tom, they shy against the full strut
Yeah, that makes sense.
tom decoy.
That makes sense.
So especially guiding, I'm trying to show somebody an exciting, successful hunt. I don't want to do anything that's going to push any birds away. Generally, my setup will have a single Jake come in to check it out.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
very like non-threatening.
it's true. I've definitely seen that. I now kind of similar to with upland bird. Do you have a preference of shot size and shotgun and all that as far as what you recommend for someone?
Yeah, when it comes to turkeys, it depends on the person. Like my wife uses a 28 gauge because it doesn't have a bunch of kick.
Mm-hmm.
And then for that 28 gauge, for any shotgun, any gauge shotgun, I generally recommend, if you can, shoot TSS or bismuth because it hits way harder. You get smaller BBs, you get a bigger pattern, whole lot more BBs going down range, and it hits ridiculously hard. So she shoots a 28 gauge with a 7 shot,
Okay.
and then generally I'll shoot. I like to switch it up. I personally love bow hunting turkeys.
Oh,
I
okay.
like getting them real close, either with a guillotine broadhead, a decapitating broadhead, just shooting for their heads. I've shot them with my bow with a rage broadhead, out to 50 yards in a body shot, and then in 2020 I shot my first one sitting on the ground with a recurve, so just a stick and string, 8 yards away, body shot. So I hunt so much and do so much. I always come up with different kind of challenging hunts to do
Mm-hmm.
to just keep it exciting, keep it fun. But generally, if you can any gauge 12, 20, people always think you need a 12 gauge 3.5 inch turkey magnum. You don't. You're just it, in my opinion, that's just a pissing competition at this point.
Oh
You
yeah.
just
Blow up the turkey.
there's no reason to blow your shoulder out. By all means, if you want to and that's what you're comfortable with, go for it. But like I've seen, females getting into hunting. They're like, yeah, everybody says I need a 3.5 inch gun and 12 gauge. I'm like, dude, just go with a 20 gauge. You're gonna enjoy it more. It's
Yeah.
not gonna give you such a hard recoil. Especially people getting into the sport, you want things to be as comfortable as possible. You don't need anything that's going to hurt a little bit or stray them away from loving it.
Right.
So there's I've shot a bunch of turkeys with 20 gauge with my 20 gauge in a 5 shot turkey load, just 2 3/4 3 inch turkey load,
Mm-hmm.
5 shot. The number one thing is knowing what your shotgun does. Too many
That's the
people go
truth.
out
Yeah.
there and they just have their shotgun and they're like, "Yep, I just got the same setup as duck hunting and I grabbed these turkey loads." Okay, how's it patterning?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Good enough to kill them? No, no, no. Go throw throw 5 rounds downrange, 20 to 40 yards on a turkey target and see how many pellets are getting in the head,
Yeah.
and actually pattern the shotgun, see how it's shooting,
To
because
your
it's generally
point,
different. You're not.
it is different. To your point, I've seen those TSSs come a long way. I got my daughter a 410 with like a super choke, and that thing shoots like a rocket, man, at like 60 yards. But those little phones, I mean, they're expensive. I think it was like $40 for 5 rounds, which was wild.
Yeah, it's the TSS and the bismuth is not cheap, but I've had people come up and bring crap ammo. Like I literally last season or the season before, I had a dude show up, and I'm like, "What are you shooting?" He just bought this Mossberg 500. It had the slug barrel on it. I'm like, "Do you have the other barrel?" He's like, "Oh yeah, it's here." I'm like, "Whew, thank God." Put the bird barrel on it. Put the bird barrel on it. Go. What are you shooting? He pulls out low brass sevens. That's what I use for grouse. I'm like, we are not shooting grouse. But luckily, I don't like, I know stuff like that happens, and I try to be more proactive. I always keep a box of TSS 12 and TSS 20s in my truck
Mm.
during turkey season. So I was like, all right, here, put these in. And we were talking in the blind, and he's like, they're too expensive. I looked at those, they're way too expensive. And I was like, can I break something down for you? And I'm not trying to be a jerk. He's like, yeah, go for it. I'm like, you showed up in an $85,000 truck wearing $1,500 worth of Sitka, shooting a $2,000 shotgun, and you're worried about a $50 bullet that does the business end.
Yeah. Yep.
He's like, I never really thought about it like that.
Yep. It's true. It's true. I mean, it's kind of funny because I saw the price of those. I got a couple, a couple 5 packs or whatever. I took her to the range and we were shooting the little slugs, at first just to get her on paper. And I was just shocked at how well those shot relative to like, as far the pattern's freaking tight. So you can definitely shoot really, really
Yeah,
far to it. But to your point, very enjoyable gun. She thinks it's fun to shoot, and she's accurate with it. So I know a lot of guys do the 12 gauge. I was curious of your vibe on that because obviously you see it a lot, but I I haven't found that you have to have that big of a powerful gun for a turkey. It's more about accuracy. I mean, be able to actually hit them right in the head is more better. It's better than having a huge amount of recoil.
yeah. To me, it comes down to what do you have? Do you only have a 12 gauge and you've shot it and you feel comfortable with it? Awesome, use that. If you're just getting into it and you're kind of on the fence and you're like, I've never really shot a gun, start with a 20. You don't have to go, even with ducks and geese, waterfowl. People always think you need, 3.5 inch magnum loads for ducks and geese, and you don't. You don't need a 12 gauge. You can. I've shot plenty of ducks and geese with a 20 gauge. It's all about, like you said, accuracy, being consistent and accurate, and you're not going to be accurate if you're worried about this big kick. If you're going
Yeah,
to get hit by this big kick and you're subconsciously thinking about it, you're gonna flinch, you're gonna jump, and it's gonna throw your shot off. But if you're nice and comfortable, you can just squeeze right through the trigger. But back to those TSS, people will transition to them and not pattern them, and they don't realize that TSS and bismuth pattern tighter than steel or lead, so they don't need an extra full choke.
yeah,
You can bump back down to I generally run with bismuth and TSS a modified, and it's basically like shooting a full choke.
hmm,
Because you go to one of these real tight pattern masters or something, that turkey comes in at 15 yards. I personally put my decoys at 15 yards with clients, so it's a nice easy shot. They can see everything. It's right in your face when they're gobbling right there. It's exciting. So at 15 yards, you got a tight choke. You're throwing a golf ball at this turkey's head size of shot.
yep,
So you back it up and you get a little wider pattern, and you can be more successful because more people miss turkeys, man, than you would think. Even at
yeah.
15 yards with a shotgun with bird shot,
Oh yeah,
I've personally been on a hunt where we had two jakes and a tom come in. They're at 15 yards. He misses the tom. The tom flies off. The jakes don't know what's going on. He tries to shoot a jake. That jake takes off. That was at 25 yards. Then the last jake standing at 35 yards, he shoots and misses that one. And it's like, you literally just missed three legal birds within 35 seconds.
yeah.
You know,
Listen, I've
if it
seen
was
it
one of my
too.
buddies, if it was one of my buddies, he'd if it was one of my buddies that did that, he'd never live it down. I remind him every day of the week. But someone just getting into it, I'm like, hey man, it's not if you're gonna miss, it's when.
Totally. I mean, listen, I've seen it with clients. It's taking them out. It's their first couple hunts. Maybe they did a deer hunt, but they never did turkey. We go on turkey. Completely different behaviors. Same deal. They miss to the right or the left or over, and then the bird turns, and then they whack it, but they shoot it like they bruise up all the meat because they didn't get the head or whatever the case is. But
Yeah,
kill the bird, and you learn from it. It's experience, and that's okay. So it is funny though in the comical aspect to talk about it though. Especially if it's a
yeah,
buddy, because you're so right, man. If it's a buddy,
yeah.
love it.
I'm, dude. You're my buddy, and you do that. I'll be telling that story at your funeral.
Oh, it's so good. Hey, that's all right.
I'm telling everybody that'll listen. Yeah, I generally with clients and everybody that asks, I tell them when a bird comes in, you should be able to see its head above the bead of your shotgun, just over the top of your bead. Because a lot of people try to put that bead right on their like eye or top of their head, and they generally sometimes aren't cheek down to the shotgun all the way or something. And I've seen most people I see miss shoot right above the turkey's head.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree.
So to negate that, I tell everybody make sure you can see the bird's head above your bead, or put your bead right where the skin meets the feathers on the neck,
I like that. That's good
and you'll
advice.
smash that bird almost every time.
What's your, speaking of hunting in general, but let's say somebody's out for their first turkey hunt, what's your best advice as far as like what should they at least like know coming into it about turkeys?
Turkeys, some people say they're smart. I don't think they're very smart, but they don't trust anything, and they have better eyes than you do. If you can see them, they can see you,
Mm-hmm.
and they catch movement like no other. So the biggest thing is staying still and not moving and being camouflaged. I preach be camouflaged head to toe. Gloves, I mean, sometimes you forgot your gloves. It's no big deal. Don't move very much. But face mask, hat, gloves, I want just my eyes showing, and just I don't want any skin showing at all. And making sure you're not just if you're in a pop-up blind, you're fine. And if you're actually like out sitting on the ground, you want some stuff in front of you to break you up. You want to brush yourself in or be brushed in a bit, and utilize shadows.
Mm,
Shadows are your biggest friend.
that's a good one.
Staying in the shadows and not in the sunlight, because shadows will hide you more than anything.
Mm-hmm. I like that. That's a good one. Yeah, their eyesight is incredible. I figured that you were going to bring that up. I had my daughter yesterday. We went to hunter safety, and we were talking turkeys at hunter safety, and I she's gone turkey hunting a couple times, so she knows like turkeys can see really well. We just always bring up red, whites, and blues. They can pinpoint it. You obviously don't want to wear hunter's orange. It was
Yeah,
funny because the instructor's like, who's been turkey hunting here? It was like 50 people. It was my daughter, myself, and like one other guy that's been turkey hunting. And the guy's like, oh, what's special about turkeys? And my daughter's like, they can see really well. I was like, yeah, it's just, like proud dad moment. But she called it out. She's like, yeah, they can see red, white, and blue really well. And it was spot on because I don't think a lot of people think that, especially when you're going deer hunting and you get used to that. You know, especially if you're sitting in a blind, right? You can get away with a little bit more, but boy, you're out at the edge of a field or something, those turkeys peg you real fast, man. No joke.
oh yeah. You gotta figure too. Again, they have one job: don't die, and they're really good at it.
Hmm.
The thing about when you get into the bird world, deer have the same job, but they don't have as much to worry about. When you get down to turkeys and grouse and stuff, a raccoon will kill a turkey if it can grab it. So
Hmm.
there's like anything is a predator to when you get into the bird world. So
Yeah.
they're real cautious about getting in sticky situations.
Yeah. No, it's a valid point. I like that. That's such a simple way of saying it, but that's the truth, right? I mean, their job is to live. They'll do anything to do so. And for us, we're out there. Obviously, we want to get meat and stuff like that, but a little bit of a different prerogative. So that's awesome, man. Good stuff. What about if somebody wants to find out more about any of your services? Where can they find that?
They can find me on Facebook or Instagram, Last Light Guide Service, or search Gary Berger.
Okay.
Either way, you can find me that way. And then a lot of people run into me at the Rooster Ranch and up at Hot Shot.
Yep. I'll see you over there. I'll be out there
Oh yeah,
opening weekend with my daughter. It'll be a good time.
it's gonna be a good time.
For sure, for sure. I'll add your stuff into the show notes and all that, if anybody's got questions or whatnot. But yeah, man, really appreciate you coming on. This was good. I got a lot of good little nuggets of information. I'm sure viewers and listeners are going to appreciate that as well, especially if they have not ventured into that side of bird hunting. But yeah, that's awesome. I really appreciate that part. I add my little piece here. It is tag application season, folks. If you are interested in getting a hold of me for any kind of tag application or hunt planning needs, please check us out at east2westhunts.com or on Instagram at east2westhunts, and reach out. You can always go onto the website, just book a free consultation. We could chat and see if we could help you out. And yeah, any other questions that you have, shoot them my way. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in. This was a great episode on bird hunting and turkeys. And just remember to scout, hunt, and repeat. We'll see you on the next one.